You're going to still have prayer. You're still going to talk about faith, but it might not be so regimented. And the beauty is that you just discern within your small group hey, what are we going to do next? What should we do? How's that going to look? I also want to chat just briefly about some of the benefits of small groups, the fruits that you grow in wisdom. You can serve together as you learn together. And then again, the support and comfort in times of trial and suffering is so key. So I'll share just a brief story. When my wife and I moved here, newly married, from Arizona to Portland, we came from a space that had some really lovely community, people that shared life, and we were very grateful for that. And when we moved here and we didn't know very many people, we were really frustrated and looking for this. And we looked and we prayed and we lamented, God, where is this community? And we looked far and wide. And then finally, the Lord hit us over the head with a 2x4 and said, well, why don't you just start something? And so we had one other couple we had known that I had kind of tricked into ministry, that had also moved here. And all we did was host in our homes every 2 weeks a potluck dinner. Very informal. And the wives conspired this, they had the great idea, and it started. And all we did was at Mass, if we saw a younger couple or even a young person, it wasn't just couples, that was, under the age of 35, we just said, hey, we do this thing called community dinner. Come over to our house. It's over here, and if you have an email, we'll get you on the list. And within a year, we had 20 different people that were interested in this group. And within 3 years, there were 60 people, different households that wanted to be a part of this from all different walks of life. And the good news was that it took off. There was no official bulletin announcement. It wasn't on the parish website. There wasn't the pastor making a pulpit announcement to everyone. It was all personal invitation and word of mouth, very laid back. So there was fruit. The challenge was, and this is something that needs to be brought up, is it grew too big and it became a large group, and 60 people on an email list, and all of a sudden the gatherings have to be in larger spaces, and you don't know when people don't show up, and so you lose relationship with folks. So again, parishes have done small groups, and in our diocese there was an initiative done in 2000, Disciples in Mission, and all these small groups that came out of that, and some are still meeting. But the problem is that the ones that are some of the ones that are still meeting are meeting with those same people, and they have not invited anyone else new into the small group. So one challenge for us that are in parish ministry is, how do we invite some of these very faithful communities to consider splitting and dividing, and to invite new people in to have the benefit of a small group, because it could easily just become a clique. And I'm speaking to myself, because I have friends that I'm close with, and we've been in small group for a long time, but there are people that are coming into our churches that are darkening our doors, or even people who aren't, that could really benefit and use that witness. So that's one example of this grassroots, simple, let's just get started approach, and then having an opportunity to make sure that we're not closing in on ourselves. Pope Francis has talked a lot about that, a self-referential church. So reminding ourselves that we're constantly looking to those on the margins. So we're going to take a couple of looks at some keys. How do we do small group well? Well, obviously, prayer is so key. We have to bathe this in prayer ahead of time. We have to make sure that we're aware and attuned to what the Spirit is doing. Hospitality is really key. Most small groups have two people involved, kind of taking ownership or leadership, servant leadership of the small group. One would be a host, and that person has the gift of hospitality. They're the one who maybe doesn't open up their home every time, but they coordinate the different homes if it moves around, and they coordinate if there's going to be a meal, a potluck, or one family taking turns, when they host, or however it works. That takes care of some of the logistics on the hospitality piece. That would be the host. The other person would be the facilitator. This is the person who's not the expert in faith, that it doesn't know everything, but is willing to help get trained and facilitate the discussion to keep people on task. This is the person that's a listening leader, that's attuned to the person who's maybe hurting, and can offer some support, as the small group ends. Or they're attuned to, this person hasn't had an opportunity to share, so I'm going to intentionally make sure there's space. And I'm also going to pay attention to the other person in the small group, which usually is me, that just can't shut up, and that the facilitator has to say, hey, thank you, I appreciate that. We just want to make sure everyone else has some time to speak up. So those are a couple keys. A few more keys to facilitating a small group. It's so important to be authentic, to be, kind of honest about who we are. Not taking an egotistical, like I'm the expert approach. Having that humility, that really does bring about friendship quickly when we're willing to be honest with ourselves. Having an opportunity to do some brief training for leaders, so that they can, what do you do when somebody starts crying in the group? How do you handle that? So providing some training for the volunteers, especially if they have not been in a small group. Again, reminding everyone that we're outward looking to the fringes, that we don't just want to have the same old people in our group forever. Is there any way we could maybe invite a neighbor or somebody who's another parent in soccer practice, but somebody who maybe is less engaged? This is often found even within marriages, right? There's a lot of holy women that are bringing their kids to mass, and the dad's at home watching football. One thing that we found is that, and then I've heard in other places as well, is that, what's more inviting? Inviting somebody who's disengaged with the Catholic faith back to mass, where we've changed some of the language, and they've forgotten when to stand, sit, and kneel. Or, hey, come over to our house, we gather, and we pray and we talk and share some life. You should come check it out. We can lower the threshold, and make the invitation easier to say yes, to come into a small group in someone's home. And then when they develop some community and people are vulnerable and processing what's going on in their life, and they do it through a lens of faith, then we can say, hey, join us. You should really come to mass with us. We sit over here. So those are some keys to get launching and getting and facilitating a small group well. And then lastly, I want to look at, okay, but now what? How? What do we do? Again, I just can't stress enough the idea of, maybe you're you just got hired at a parish, and no one's going to listen to your new idea, or maybe you don't even work in a parish, but you can start. The grassroots organic approach often is the one that works more, that takes root more quickly. You can look back to, and show Father, we've just been doing this on the side. That's what happened in our parish when we did that community dinner, approach. he heard about it because somebody asked about it, and then he realized, oh, this was happening. And we told him, and we said, well, Father, we're not trying to do it, in competition with what you're doing. And he said, oh no, this is great. Young families, this is lovely. He said, can I keep an eye out for young families too and point them in your direction? And we said, sure. This is great. So most of the time, Jesus started small. He got 12 and really invested in 3. And I think most of us can do that. It's important to remember too that small groups, they're messy. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the martyr Lutheran pastor that was killed in the Holocaust, World War II, he wrote a little book on communal life called Life Together. And in it, he has a quote that I think is really important to keep in mind that keeps us from making small groups an idol. He said, those who love community destroy community, but those who love his neighbor build community. And I think what he was trying to say is that communal life is messy. Anyone who's been in a small group knows, especially with me, that I can't stop talking, and we bring our messes of our life, and they're real. But each of us bring that, and so we have to be careful and go into this knowing that it's going to be messy, that there's going to be personality issues, and there's going to be drama, and we're going to have to probably interrupt people to make sure gossip gets cut off, as Pope Francis is reminding us again this Lent. They're going to be messy, but they're worth it. This ministry, I think, helps bring people into an encounter with the Lord and with each other that is so fruitful. So we have to be, when small groups get messy, sometimes you'll be able to work through it. Other times it's going to fall apart, and that's okay. Small groups, it might last you a month, it might last you all of Lent, it might last you a year, or people might move, or they get transferred. You get, all these things happen. Again, that's okay. The question then remains, how do we help these people regroup? So having these connection events, maybe quarterly, where we invite, it's the season of spring, it's whatever our excuse is, but we're gathering again. And so if you're not plugged into a small group right now, we want to invite you to hear some of the options that are happening. Here's a great little video that will talk about that personal invitation.
So let's say you're an excellent small group host with an excellent group, but you know how life goes. People move away, get married, change groups, buy a desert island, or take care of their 90-year-old mother in the Caribbean, who happens to live on that desert island they just bought. So one day, when your group meets, you're faced with the fact that the only member left is your dog and your spouse. But there's some part of you that thinks that small groups shouldn't be this small. So then you find yourself asking, how do I get more people in my small group? Excellent question. There are thousands of ways to grow your group, but here's a simple way that's proven successful. When you attend church, you most likely sit in the same area every week. Well, when you look around, the people around you usually are the people that were around you last week, and the week before, and the week before. So, for 2 weeks, try greeting them before the service. Ask them about their week and if they ever plan on buying a desert island. Once you get to know them better, ask them if they already attend a small group. If the answer is no, just say that you, your spouse, and your dog have a small group at your house. Ask them to try it just 1 week and see what they think. Try it, and you'll see that your group will be filled in no time. If not, just sit in another area of church and try again. Small group life.
So again, super simple and practical. If getting those leaders for personal invitation is key, and we'll talk about that. But the other thing we have to keep in mind is if our goal is to have these groups multiply, to have these groups not just remain cliques and focused inward on themselves, we have to find a way to raise up new leaders, right? So in that Father Mallon story, We had, all these staff members burning out. A lot of parish staff are having to shrink and being added more jobs onto one person. So we have to find a way to recreate ourselves, to multiply ourselves, frankly, just like Jesus did. So this little phrase, "I see in you," is a great way to begin inviting people to pray, to discern, maybe working as a facilitator or as a host. So, I really see in you a great hospitality gift. I think that's something that you're really great at. Would you ever consider being a small group host? Or, hey, I'm going to be out of town next week when the small group is meeting. I wanted to maybe see if you'd be willing to facilitate the group, and I can go through the resource or talk to you about it ahead of time. But would you consider that? So we've got to find a way to multiply ourselves, and that "I see in you" phrase is a great way to do that. So that within 3 years, just like Jesus did with the disciples, there's an opportunity to split and have a whole new group of leaders to lead small groups. So as a lot of parishes are launching small groups starting tomorrow. They've been probably talking about it the last couple of weekends. I know that's some parishes I've been working with are in that situation. Um, the invitation versus recruiting is is huge. And this goes for inviting into the small group, but also inviting into leadership. Recruiting is the usual bulletin announcement. It's the flyer. It's the poster in the hall. It's the pastor making a pulpit announcement at the end of mass. And we should do those things. I don't think we want this initiative or these things to be on the website, but reaching out to the person next to us at mass, like that video showed, or some people that are already in our life on a regular basis, that's so much more effective. It's that personalness. I mean, and again, we see that in Jesus. He's walking on the beach and he sees the fisherman. He's like, "Hey, how you doing over there, Peter?" Like that's what we need to do. We need to have that courage to invite. So we've looked at the why, why small groups and building a culture. And there's lots of reasons: simplicity, flexibility. It's what Jesus did, and most especially, it's effective. We've looked at what small groups are: a group of people that are committed to each other and growing as a disciple of Jesus Christ. We've looked at the ways that we can group uh, by gender, by interest, by stage of life, by neighborhood. It doesn't matter how you group, it just matters that you're in a group. And I would say the same thing for resources. There's some phenomenal resources out there, many of which have video teachings that are engaging and done well and authentically Catholic. But honestly, I don't think the video matters as much as just being in a small group. And one of the lessons we've learned is that if you do a program or a particular resource, when it ends, sometimes the small group will end. So a lot of groups you're doing some small group stuff for Lent, but how beautiful would it be if the pastor and the parish staff invited those groups to continue meeting? Maybe it looks different, maybe the time, the frequencies change, great, but keep meeting, keep meeting. We looked at some of the keys to facilitating a small group: having a host, having a leader, recruiting new leadership. We looked at making sure we're good listeners, getting people trained, having that personal hospitality. So we'd like to take the next little bit of time to maybe have some questions and see how we can continue the conversation.
Okay, thank you so much, Jason. Let's see, I'm going to take back the presenter mode here from you. Okay. Thank you so much. This was really filled with such great information and really hopeful and inspiring to maybe reignite a community. We've got a lot of questions, and please continue to send in your questions. One question that I had also, and this is from Lori, is there a book or resource about starting small groups in parishes that you would recommend or point us towards?
Great question. The website PDX Fam Life has a section under small groups where you can find this presentation. You can find some handouts for training, and there are a number of books and resources there. Again, this is not a new idea. There's some great stuff on Amazing Parish's website. I know Parish Catalyst has talked about it, Divine Renovation. And there are some books listed there that come to mind. I've read all the content I got was from other people and other books that I've read. But honestly, if you go to the website, I don't even think you need to read a whole book to look at it. Again, we make it more complicated than it is.
Mm-hmm. So you said that's PDX Fam?
PDXFamLife.org.
Famlife.org. Okay, wonderful. Let's see. What is a good plan for renewing groups so that they don't stay static?
Well, I mean, you can look at switching out or a different approach to a particular resource. You might have been doing a Bible study and you did a gospel and then one of Paul's letters, and maybe switching it up to the joy of the gospel. That would be a great small group study in and of itself. I'm so impressed with Pope Francis's letter there. But I think honestly, there's Ecclesiastes, a time for everything, and it might be a time to say, you know what, this has been a good run, and we have all this experience of running a small group and being a part of a small group. Let's pair off in couples or two women, and let's reach out and start a new group. It doesn't mean you can't be friends with those people still and have them over to your house for dinner and interact, but in some ways, I would say use that opportunity as a way to grow.
Okay, great, thank you. A person has expressed an experience in which she wanted to move into another group. She was part of a group. They changed meeting on a different day. She asked to join another group, and she was told that they would need to check with the other members to see if she could join. And so she felt very hurt, judged, as if she wasn't really welcome.
So that's an important distinction. So they talk about and this is, people have different thoughts, but the idea of a closed group versus an open group. Usually, when you're starting a small group, you'll have a period of it being open until you reach a threshold of 10, max 12 people. But after that, you want it to be closed, because if the group of people keeps changing, you're less likely to be honest and vulnerable and be able to receive accountability and prayer and all those things. So it makes sense that you have groups for a season to be open initially and then to be closed for a while. But again, I would say, sometimes the small groups are not connected very well to the parish. Oh, that's just the women's group and they're over there, and as long as they're not burning anything down, we're happy with it, So I think that's fair to say, and my heart goes out to you with that challenge. But I would also say, like, consider, is there another woman? Maybe someone in that group already that you could say, hey, what if we started our own? We need people that are willing to be courageous in that space.
So not taking it so much personally, but that the group had already formed.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. Yes. Yeah. Okay, let's see. How about what sort of training for leaders? What would the elements be for that?
Again, on that website, you can. There's actually a handout that I put together that I stole all the resources from a bunch of other uh, websites. But I think there's two specific trainings that you need to look at. One is around the host role. How do you communicate? Some of it's the details, the nuts and bolts of how you do this. So, how do you email everybody and make sure there's things like Evite that you can, help you sign up for potluck spots, and so you don't end up with, 4 salads. And then you have some more specific training for the facilitator. It's not hard. There's a webinar that I did, I think the Lent before last, right around this time, that was like, okay, I've been asked to be a small group leader, and I've never been in one. What do I need to know? And that's on that same website, pdxfamlife.org. And then there's also a little handout that are like really simple, practical things to keep in mind when you're the facilitator. It's almost like a little cheat sheet. So the tone of voice, some ground rules. One thing you're going to want to do at the beginning of every small group sharing is reminding people that we're going to keep this confidential, that this stays within the room. You're going to talk about the importance of silence. If you're a facilitator, your job is to invite everybody else to talk. And so leaving room where there's silence, and it's a little awkward, but you're going to sit through it until somebody gets the courage to finally open up. So things like that would be, or you can find on the website too. But again, it's not rocket science.
Okay, thank you. We have another question. Do you have ideas for young families to handle childcare during the meetings?
That's a great question. That's something we encountered when we started the group. We had, maybe I think 8 couples, and then within like 3 years, like 4 years, I think we had like 25 children, and it was just like, oh my gosh. So sometimes, we tried to do like there was a couple group that we would meet on a monthly basis, and we would do it at a park during the good weather time. And then in the winter, we would, the women would meet on this day and the men would meet on this day, so the other spouse could handle the other kid. We also, one Lent, we got really creative. There was a larger size house, and the women went upstairs into the bedroom and did like the Lenten resource while the dads fed the kids or started feeding the kids and ate, and then we switched. I know other people that have gotten like a couple of high school kids from the youth group, and they've given them hey, here's a movie. We're going to shove everybody in here. Your job is to just make sure that nobody dies. So those would be a couple of ideas. We know that that's messy, but yeah, you got to get creative.
Absolutely. Sounds like you have.
Try to.
Yes, and in fact, I wanted to share with you, Brian from the Diocese of St. Petersburg said, thank you for this opportunity to creatively think about small groups.
Well, and I welcome your feedback. These are just some limited experiences, but a lot of what I've learned is from other people. And so sharing that and having a forum to talk about this would be lovely.
Absolutely. Well, Jason, thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise today, and for all of the attendees who have joined us. Before we sign off, we'd like to thank our partners once again: the National Conference for Catechetical Leadership, the National Association of Catholic Family Life Ministers, the National Association for Lay Ministry, and the National Federation of Priest Councils. If you're not familiar with any of these organizations, please check out their websites, which are displayed here on the screen. This webinar, as well as all of our past webinar recordings, appear on YouTube, Vimeo, and the Ave Maria Press website. And I will also include the PDX Fam Life website that you mentioned too in the email. Please mark your calendars for the next webinar in the Professional Development Series. On Tuesday, March 12th at 3 o'clock Eastern, Andres Arango will guide us to understand the charismatic renewal and its importance for Hispanics in the U.S. Church. This webinar will be presented in Spanish. So again, thank you so much. Everyone, have a great afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Happy Lent.
Thank you.